The empire at its peak. Jake Carter stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, surveying the glittering cityscape below like a king surveying his kingdom. At 32, he had achieved what most entrepreneurs only dreamed of. His tech startup, Carter Innovations, had exploded into a multi-billion-dollar empire in just 5 years. The boy from nowhere had become the man everyone wanted to be. His phone buzzed with another congratulatory message about the latest merger. Jake barely glanced at it. Success had become routine, almost boring. He craved something more, something that would challenge him in ways boardrooms and balance sheets never could. That's when he saw her. Lily Sinclair walked into the charity gala like she belonged to a different world, because she did. Daughter of Gregory Sinclair, the billionaire tycoon whose name alone made Wall Street tremble, Lily moved through the crowd with an effortless grace that immediately captivated Jake. But it wasn't her designer dress or her pedigree that stopped him in his tracks. It was the way she laughed. Genuine, unguarded, completely at odds with the calculated personas around her. Jake, never one to hesitate, approached her. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere but here," he said, offering her a champagne flute. Lily's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Is it that obvious?" She took the glass, studying him with curiosity. "And you are?" "Jake Carter." He waited for the recognition, the typical widening of eyes that came with his name. Instead, she simply smiled. "Should I know you?" For the first time in years, Jake felt genuinely intrigued. Here was someone who didn't care about his empire, his net worth, or his reputation. Over the next 3 hours, they talked about everything except business, art, philosophy, dreams that had nothing to do with money. Lily was brilliant, grounded, and refreshingly real in a world of facades. Their romance ignited like wildfire. Within months, Jake proposed on a private beach in Santorini, and Lily said yes. The wedding was the social event of the year, two powerful families uniting, though Jake noticed Gregory Sinclair's eyes held reservations even as he walked his daughter down the aisle. He dismissed it. He had won the ultimate prize, not just a wife, but a partner who made him feel human again. Little did he know, his empire's foundation was already beginning to crack. Shadows of doubt. The first 6 months of marriage felt like a dream Jake never wanted to wake from. Lily transformed his sterile penthouse into a home, filling it with laughter, warmth, and a sense of belonging he'd never known. She challenged his ruthless business decisions, softened his sharp edges, and showed him that life existed beyond profit margins and power plays. But beneath the surface of marital bliss, storm clouds were gathering. Gregory Sinclair had always been a man who protected his investments, and his daughter was his most precious one. From the moment Jake entered Lily's life, Gregory had been watching, waiting, analyzing every move the young entrepreneur made. What he discovered troubled him deeply. Jake's meteoric rise hadn't been entirely clean. Hidden in the labyrinth of Carter Innovations' financial records were questionable dealings, aggressive acquisitions that skirted legal boundaries, partnerships with ethically dubious investors, and accounting practices that existed in moral gray areas. Jake had justified every decision as necessary for growth, for survival in a cutthroat industry. But to Gregory, they were ticking time bombs that would eventually explode, taking his daughter down with them. One evening, Gregory invited Jake to his private study under the guise of discussing a potential collaboration. The older man poured 2 glasses of scotch, his movements deliberate and measured. "You've built something impressive, Jake," Gregory began, his voice deceptively casual. "But empires built on shaky foundations rarely stand the test of time." Jake's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're implying, sir, but Carter Innovations is solid." "Is it?" Gregory slid a folder across his mahogany desk. "These documents suggest otherwise." Jake's blood ran cold as he flipped through the pages, his secrets laid bare. "How did you—" "I make it my business to know who my daughter has tied her life to." Gregory's eyes hardened. "Clean this up, Jake, or I will."
It was a declaration of war disguised as fatherly concern. Jake left that night feeling violated and furious, but also terrified. Gregory Sinclair wasn't a man who made empty threats. When Jake confided in Lily that night, she tried to mediate, caught between the two men she loved. "Maybe he's right, Jake. Maybe you should review." "Don't," Jake snapped, immediately regretting his tone. "Don't take his side against me." The first crack appeared in their perfect marriage.
The fall. 3 months later, Jake's world began to disintegrate. It started subtly, a key investor suddenly withdrawing, citing strategic differences. Then another. Jake's CFO discovered irregularities in their stock prices, suggesting coordinated selling. Within weeks, Carter Innovations' value plummeted by 40%. The media, once his greatest admirers, now circled like sharks, smelling blood. Jake worked 18-hour days trying to stem the bleeding, but every solution led to another problem. His board members grew restless. Partners he'd trusted for years suddenly became unreachable. It was as if an invisible hand was systematically dismantling everything he'd built. Then came the revelation that shattered him completely. His head of security delivered the evidence. Gregory Sinclair was behind it all. The billionaire had used his vast network to pressure investors, manipulate markets, and trigger regulatory investigations into Jake's company. Every setback, every betrayal, traced back to his father-in-law's meticulous orchestration. Jake stormed into the Sinclair estate, rage consuming him. Gregory met him in the foyer, calm and unapologetic. "You destroyed me," Jake shouted, his voice echoing through the marble halls. "You deliberately ruined my company." "I protected my daughter from a man who would eventually ruin himself," Gregory replied coldly. "Better she suffers now than when you're facing criminal charges in 5 years. You had no right." "I had every right, as her father." Gregory's composure cracked. "You think I don't see what you are, Jake? Ambitious? Brilliant, yes, but reckless. You would have taken her down with you when your house of cards collapsed." Jake returned home that night broken and seething. When Lily tried to comfort him, he pulled away. "Did you know? Did you know what your father was doing?" The hesitation in her eyes told him everything. "Jake, I suspected, but you did nothing." His voice was hollow. "You watched him destroy me, and you stayed silent." "I was trying to protect you both." Lily's tears flowed freely. "Don't you see? If he exposed everything publicly, you'd be in prison. This way I lose everything, while you remain Daddy's perfect princess." The words hung between them like poison. Lily's face crumpled, and she fled to their bedroom, locking the door behind her. Jake stood alone in their living room, surrounded by the ruins of his empire and his marriage, realizing that losing his fortune was nothing compared to losing her trust. The reckoning. The weeks that followed were the darkest of Jake's life. Carter Innovations declared bankruptcy, and with it went his reputation, his fortune, and his identity. The press devoured the story. Tech wonderkind's spectacular fall dominated headlines. Former friends avoided his calls. His penthouse was seized by creditors. Everything he'd built, everything he'd been, evaporated like morning mist. But the worst part was the silence in their marriage. Jake and Lily existed as ghosts in their new modest apartment, circling each other with careful words and averted eyes. She'd stood by him publicly, refusing to leave despite her father's urgings, but the warmth between them had frozen over. Jake couldn't forgive her perceived betrayal, and Lily couldn't forgive his inability to see her impossible position. One sleepless night, Jake found himself going through old files on his laptop. Not business documents, but photos. Images of him and Lily laughing on their honeymoon, celebrating small victories, simply being together. In every picture, he saw what he'd been too blind to recognize. She had been his greatest achievement, not his company. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His obsession with control and success had made him miss what truly mattered. Gregory hadn't just destroyed his empire, he'd exposed the rot within it, the moral compromises Jake had rationalized away.
His father-in-law had been ruthless, yes, but not entirely wrong. Jake found Lily on the apartment balcony, staring at the city lights. The woman who once glowed with confidence now seemed fragile, diminished by the weight of their shared misery. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words feeling inadequate, yet essential. Lily didn't turn. For what? Specifically, there's so much to choose from. For blaming you, for making you choose between your father and me, for not seeing that you were trying to save me in the only way you could. He moved beside her, careful not to touch her yet. Your father did what he thought was right. I hate it, but I understand it now. He destroyed you, Jake. No, Lily. I destroyed myself. Your father just accelerated the inevitable. I built my empire on compromises I told myself didn't matter. I prioritized power over principles. And worst of all, I almost lost you because I couldn't admit I was wrong. Lily turned to him then, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I should have told you what I suspected. I should have fought for us differently. I was so afraid of losing both of you that I nearly lost myself. They stood there, two broken people, finally seeing each other clearly for the first time in months. Jake reached for her hand, half expecting her to pull away. Instead, she gripped it tightly, as if anchoring herself to something real. "Can we survive this?" he asked, vulnerability replacing the arrogance that once defined him. "I don't know," Lily admitted. "But I want to try."
Rebuilding from ashes. The confrontation came 3 months later, on a gray autumn morning at the Sinclair estate. Lily had requested the meeting, insisting both men she loved needed to face each other, truly face each other, if there was any hope of moving forward. Gregory sat in the study, older and wearier than Jake remembered. The victory of destroying Carter Innovations had clearly brought the billionaire no joy, only the hollow satisfaction of protecting his daughter from perceived danger. "Mr. Sinclair," Jake began, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "I didn't come here to ask for your money or your forgiveness. I came because Lily asked me to, and because I've learned that pride destroys more than any business rival ever could." Gregory's expression remained impassive. "If you're here to convince me you've changed, I have changed, but not for you, for myself, for Lily." Jake leaned forward. "You were right about my company. The foundation was cracked. I cut corners, justified questionable decisions, and convinced myself the ends justified the means. I was heading toward a cliff, and you just pushed me off before I could take Lily with me." The admission hung in the air. Gregory's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in his armor. "But here's what you didn't understand," Jake continued. "Lily doesn't need you to fight her battles. She's stronger than both of us combined. She doesn't need protection. She needs trust. And by going behind her back, by making decisions for her, you hurt her as much as I did." Lily, who had been standing silently by the window, finally spoke. "He's right, Dad. You both treated me like a prize to be won or protected, not a person capable of making my own choices." Gregory's composure finally crumbled. "I only wanted to keep you safe, sweetheart. When I saw the path Jake was on, you should have talked to me, to both of us." Lily's voice was firm but loving. "Instead, you destroyed Jake's life and nearly destroyed our marriage." The old billionaire looked at his daughter, then at Jake, and something shifted in his weathered face. "You're right, both of you." He stood slowly, moving to his desk drawer and retrieving a folder. "I've been carrying this for weeks, unsure what to do with it." Inside were documents, investment opportunities, business contacts, letters of recommendation. "I can't undo what I did, Jake, but I can give you a chance to rebuild. Not your old empire, something better. Something built on integrity this time." Jake stared at the folder, then pushed it back across the desk. "Thank you, but no. If I rebuild, it needs to be on my own terms, with my own resources. Otherwise, I'll never know if I've truly changed or if I'm just playing a different version of the same game."
For the first time, Gregory smiled, a genuine expression of respect. "You've grown up, son." The word son landed softly between them, unexpected and transformative. 6 months later, Jake and Lily sat in their small apartment, now transformed into both a home and an office. Jake's new consulting business was modest but honest, helping startups avoid the ethical pitfalls he'd once embraced. The money was a fraction of what he'd once made, but he slept peacefully for the first time in years. Lily had found her own path too, working with nonprofits and discovering a passion for social justice that her privileged upbringing had kept hidden. Together, they were building something neither money nor power could create, a partnership based on honesty, respect, and genuine love. "Do you ever miss it?" Lily asked one evening, curled against him on their worn couch. Jake kissed her forehead, breathing in the moment's simple perfection. "Every day I wake up next to you, I realize I was chasing the wrong fortune all along. You're my empire now, Lily. You always were. I was just too blind to see it." Outside their window, the city sparkled with possibilities. Jake Carter had lost everything except what truly mattered, and in that loss, he'd finally found himself and the love that would sustain him through whatever came next. The billionaire's daughter and the fallen entrepreneur had learned the hardest lesson of all. True wealth isn't measured in dollars or power, but in the courage to rebuild yourself when everything falls apart, and in having someone who believes you enough to rebuild alongside you. Their fortune had vanished, but their future had just begun. The end.